Hi, and welcome to the Own Your Crypto podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Olson, Head of Growth at Xverse, the most advanced Web3 Bitcoin wallet, where we believe in connecting the world to a more accessible, decentralized economy. If you're curious about the latest and greatest tech building on Bitcoin, you're in the right place. Each episode, we invite experts to share exciting updates about what they're working on in the ecosystem, so we can share the knowledge and tools for you to own your crypto. Through casual conversations, we cover topics like blockchain technology, DeFi, financial literacy, and how to use Web3 on Bitcoin in practical ways. If you'd like to tune in live, ask questions, or join the conversation, be sure to follow Xverse on Twitter at Xverse app. Last few weeks, we talked a lot about Bitcoin NFTs, from digital art to marketplaces and domain spaces. So today, we'd like to take a deeper dive into the creative process behind CrashPunks, which is one of the most prominent Bitcoin NFT collections out there. I'm sure many of you are familiar with, and I see a lot of CrashPunks out there in the audience. So shout out to all of you. And at the same time, while we're all here, we want to open up the funnel to a broader topic around how these collection owners or communities are working towards becoming decentralized autonomous communities, or DAOs as we'll refer to them moving forward. So just a quick timing for definitions here. DAO is a community of people who share a common interest, leverage blockchain smart contracts that establish the DAO community rules to form a legal structure or decentralized governance. So similar to centralized organizations, DAOs also have treasuries and can decide how to deploy these funds through decentralized voting. And this is often weighted based on how many tokens each user holds. For example, a user who holds 2 tokens will have twice the voting power of a user who holds 1 token. And basically, if there's, for example, a decentralized community you're really passionate about, or NFT collection forming this DAO, you can join or buy in and be part of the voting process and deciding how that community is run, from decisions around communications and events and marketing to even network changes. So a little bit of history. The first, probably most famous DAO is Dash. It was created in 2014 by Evan Duffield. And so they've been around for a good amount of time. But today we're going to be taking a deeper dive into DAOs emerging on the Bitcoin blockchain and how this is possible, how DAOs on the Bitcoin blockchain are different from any other blockchains, and so much more. We have the creator and founder of CrashPunks here, which we're thrilled about. Grace, if you're up on stage, I see you're up on stage. Perfect. We have to start with you. Could you give us a quick hello and maybe a few words just for everyone to get to know you and what you're working on?
Yeah, sure. So hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Thank you for being here. So I started CrashPunks. It's a really large NFT collection secured on Bitcoin with stacks. And the initial concept was all around like a cyberpunk animated anime, kind of like sci-fi theme. And I just wanted to bring more awareness to the stacks ecosystem. And then also, we now have like really exciting opportunities to test out some of the new platforms that are coming into the Stacks ecosystem, like Console and Xverse, and really excited to be a part of it.
Awesome. Definitely want to dive deeper into your creative inspiration, but so glad to have you here. And also thrilled to have Trevor Owens, a managing partner at Stack Startups and host of NFT Now. Trevor, I'm sure a majority of the people here already know you, but for those who are new to the ecosystem, can you also just give us a quick hello?
Sure, and I love your CrashPunk, by the way, Elizabeth. Really looks dope. So my name is Trevor Owens. I'm the managing partner of Stacks Ventures, and we're an early stage investor in 47 currently amazing companies such as StackerDAOs and, of course, Xverse. So really lucky to have the CEOs of 2 of our shining, fast-growing, and killer companies here, and excited for you guys hosting these spaces. I think it's really fantastic. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much for joining. I know it's pretty late on your end, and Grace, it's early on your side too. So thanks everyone for tuning in here around the world. And I'm also super happy to have Orlando Cosme here from StackerDAO Labs. Orlando, can you also give a quick hello and tell us in a few words the project you're working on, and we'll take a deeper dive later.
Yeah, first off, thanks for inviting me. I'm glad to be here as always. And so, yeah, I'm the co-founder and CEO of StackerDAO Labs, and we're making it as easy as possible to create and manage Web3 organizations like DAOs, powered by Bitcoin. So the end goal is you can kind of think of it as a kind of like a mix between Shopify and AngelList for Web3 organizations.
Perfect. That's great. Yeah, so happy to have all of our guest speakers here. Really appreciate your time. Let's go ahead and kick off just with a few open-ended questions, and really anyone on stage, feel free to jump in here. But I just would like to start off with some basics around why do we need decentralized autonomous organizations? What's driving the demand here? And also, what are some things DAOs can uniquely achieve that differentiate them from centralized organizations?
I could maybe take the lead on this one. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about structuring, designing DAOs, and really what the kind of key unlock or the key component of DAOs is the fact that they're trustless. So it's a means of trustless coordination. And this basically allows for, I would say, like 3 unlocks. The first is that it allows really anyone, like any group of people from around the world, to be able to coordinate and manage resources without really knowing each other. And I think in a world, kind of in this internet age, in this digital age, where a lot of people end up meeting friends online, may not know each other, might be in different jurisdictions, that becomes incredibly important. Because the fact of the matter is, right, like I may meet someone online, but let's say if you want to like raise money, some funds together and invest or build a product or something, if I just send you money, I have no idea where you are in the world, you could just end up like rugging me and taking all my money, right? And so because DAOs, like the rules of a DAO are written in smart contract, immutable smart contracts, I know that like someone, you can't just have like a central group of actors that could just like rug me and like kind of just like shift the rules on me or take my money if I like deposit some funds. I think that's number one. Number two, second unlock is that if you're going to have it's like a decentralized, censorship resistant internet and protocols, right? Well, they need to be managed similarly in a censorship resistant way, right? So you can't really have like a DeFi protocol that's like purportedly censorship resistant, but then it's being run by a company, and then the government can always go after that company. That company can end up just turning into like the next JP Morgan, right? Or like any sort of Wall Street bank, and really just kind of be more of like a monopoly. And then finally, the last thing I would say is it provides a means of user or community or member ownership. And this is important because, again, if we want to go live in a world where, or if your vision for the future for crypto is to have this kind of user-owned internet, the only way you can really do so is if the people who are managing these products and organizations have some sort of real ownership. Your members can vote on proposals that can actually have some sort of like automatic functionality. So again, you don't really have this centralized group of actors. And so DAO members can actually have like real power and in that sense, real ownership over these like internet protocols or these financial primitives and protocols.
Thanks so much. These are such great points all around. Really fascinating. And so just also to further clarify, given that this is fully decentralized, can DAO still have a board of directors or like certain leaders within the community, perhaps still maintaining the balance of voting power, but essentially to drive the thought leadership and incentives for participation? Because I can imagine sometimes people would be involved in multiple different DAOs. So how to get them to continue to participate and engage in the voting process?
Yeah, and I think if you look at, I mean, we all know this from like our daily lives, right? If you're ever in any sort of group of people, you kind of need some kind of leadership or people to kind of just like raise their hand to actually do something. Even if you're like in a group of friends, there's usually like maybe like 1, 2, 3, or like there's like a core group of people that are actually kind of like the people that are always kind of organizing things. And so I think it's kind of inherent in human coordination that you are going to have leaders emerge, and you can structure a DAO in any numerous amount of ways. But I think the real important part is that just at the end of the day, if it's really kind of just being checked and run by the membership, and DAO members, and power is flowing from DAO members, flowing up from the bottom to this type of leadership, then I think it's fine. You're still furthering the principles of what a DAO is kind of there for. Instead of having, let's say, again, this kind of like top-down heavy hierarchy where, again, like power flows from the top or from the CEO or board down to the end user or lower employees.
That makes a lot of sense. And while we have you up on stage, Orlando, could you give us perhaps a more in-depth overview of what you're doing over at StackerDAO Labs in helping to create Bitcoin DAOs? And also, while you're at it, would you mind explaining to us how are Bitcoin DAOs different from DAOs on other blockchains?
For the first question, and we kind of have dropped some alpha hints about this and like kind of have talked to people personally about this, and we're going to end up publishing something soon, but we kind of have a new kind of lineup of 3 different products that will be a kind of like full suite of products as we kind of move from this private beta stage to more of like a public beta And the three products would be number one, StackerDAO, aka our own namesake. And so a StackerDAO, if you've ever checked out MegaDAO, which is like the DAO for Megapon, a StackerDAO is a more permissionless DAO that uses some sort of existing token or NFT as kind of its governance token. So basically, if there's like an existing NFT community, or again, if like a project launches its own token, like a DeFi protocol, basically you're forming like a series of smart contracts around that. And the idea is that it's permissionless in the sense that anyone can just buy the token or buy the NFT, and they're now a member, and they're a voting member in the DAO. So that's a StackerDAO. The second product is called a club or clubs. Clubs, currently on testnet now, and we're doing some like UX testing sessions with people, are membership-gated DAOs that you can use to raise funds, govern, and take action together. And so the key component here is that it's membership gated in that the DAO controls its membership, and this is done through funding. So every member of the DAO needs to kind of provide funds to the DAO. So it's the way in which the DAO raises funds. And they're also powered by what we're calling club passes. Club passes are non-transferable NFTs. And so like if you have a club pass, you can then deposit into the DAO. And so the reason why we went with NFTs is that it makes it a lot more composable. So you can use like other apps, whether that's to like gate your Discord or like use it for console or whatever. It makes it just a lot more composable. And so clubs are more appropriate for like anything that you really kind of want to raise funds for members for. So like an investment DAO, an impact DAO that may donate to a cause, let's say like Ukraine or something, or maybe like a service DAO that's made out of like different freelancers that kind of provide different sorts of like contract or services that want to organize to kind of like market themselves more easily and get some benefits. And then our final product is kind of like a multi-sig product. It's called Teams. We actually have one team right now on mainnet that's being tested by a small NFT project. We're about to do some kind of a lot more heavier testing, actually probably starting tomorrow, and actually might be on mainnet starting potentially end of next week. So you might want to kind of watch out for that. And so Teams uses our same DAO framework, but instead of like having a governance token control voting and proposals in action, you're just using like a list of addresses. And what makes Teams pretty powerful is it can almost do basically anything that an individual person can do. You just have to add what's called an extension. If you want to like swap tokens, you can add an extension to swap tokens or buy NFTs. And that's how all of our products work. And so with a team, it allows for kind of collective action among working groups. And this is a good use case for any sort of like project team. Also, it's good for sub DAOs and also any sort of early DAO that kind of wants to progressively decentralize. They can actually form a team and then actually pretty easily upgrade by just like enabling some new contracts to the team, upgrade to a full-on decentralized DAO. So that's kind of our new products that we'll be launching pretty soon. And then in terms of your second question with respect to Bitcoin, I would say in terms of things like formation and smart contracts, DAOs on Bitcoin aren't necessarily like that different than like DAOs on, let's say, Ethereum or like Solana, because again, like smart contracts are kind of just smart contracts. I think the key here with Bitcoin DAOs is you can tap into the most decentralized, secure, and valuable network for your DAO. So whether that's maybe you want to raise funds in Bitcoin, right? And we've actually seen this with some potential customers where Bitcoin still has the biggest Web3 brand name. And so you actually have people who aren't that familiar with crypto or Web3, and they want to form, let's say, like some kind of club or something. Maybe they already have some kind of community. You want to form a club for their community. And actually their members feel a lot more comfortable using Bitcoin because they know Bitcoin, right? Like everyone knows Bitcoin. My mom knows Bitcoin. My mom has no idea what Ethereum is. She doesn't understand Bitcoin, but she's heard of Bitcoin before. And also, again, you're kind of basing your funds, and again, all Stack smart contracts obviously are anchored out to Bitcoin, and your smart contract, really your foundation on the most decentralized and secure network. And so I guess one of my pitches is if you want to form decentralized autonomous organization, you may also want to build it on top of the most decentralized network. So I think that's kind of what distinguishes Bitcoin DAOs from other DAOs. But in terms of like smart contracts and things like that, they're pretty similar.
This is really fantastic and excited to see how things roll out with StackerDAO Labs. So thanks for sharing that. Trevor, anything to add to that? As one of the OGs in the space, I would love to hear more about your perspective across the ecosystems. I think in particular, do you think there's anything that culturally differentiates Bitcoin from Ethereum DAOs or DAOs secured by other blockchains?
Yeah, I think it's always great listening to Orlando. He's really an expert on this space, and coming from his background has a really great understanding of the ins and outs of DAOs. I think I'm very excited for Bitcoin DAOs, especially because I think it's something that kind of the value is very obvious and hard to argue against, in the sense that blockchain allows us to organize and coordinate human activity in a new way and sort of verify somebody's voting power or coordinate that voting power. And it's just a very clear and powerful use case for blockchain that you wouldn't do it in a centralized server, and it doesn't make any sense in the Web2 paradigm. And so I think that when it comes to the Bitcoin community, I expect that as these technologies like StackerDAOs become more mature, that we will see a lot of penetration in the Bitcoin market, more so than we have seen with NFTs, for example, because the Bitcoin community tends to like put their nose up against NFTs and say, who cares about JPEGs and stuff like that? And really kind of that whole ecosystem was birthed on Ethereum, right? I see NFT communities being a natural fit for DAOs. I think that, of course, there's different levels of DAOs. Orlando talked about some really great examples and use cases, such as investment clubs being just a very clear and obvious, no better way to do investment clubs going forward. And I think most venture funds, as the space becomes more mature, are going to be moving towards that approach. I don't think we're going to see venture funds being done the way that they're being done now. It's just such an obvious and seamless future ahead for doing venture funds and all kinds of investment clubs in the DAO format. I tend to think of it like the word DAO, like decentralized autonomous organization, is kind of not only a mouthful, but maybe like a poor choice in the sense that it kind of makes you think of like you're ordering an Uber and then the Uber comes and shows up outside your place and there's no driver and it just picks you up and takes you where it goes. And it makes you think of like these offices where there's no employees. It's just run by AI, like sort of like from the movie Terminator when Skynet takes over and everything's run like autonomously. But really what it's about, I think, is more caters towards the other side of the equation, not like pure corporations, for-profit corporations. I think that's going to be really, I don't know if that'll ever happen, because I think for-profit corporations, there's still so many more innovations that need to happen. The coordination aspect isn't going to make innovation easier. I don't think that the use cases for something like a big company are as clear or potent at this stage, right? That's going to be kind of the final phase. I think the early go-to-market and early maturity is coming in more like volunteer organizations and things that are not clearly like for-profit companies. And I think NFTs communities kind of fall squarely into that. I think nonprofits, where they have a kind of like a constitution or they have some kind of more formal governance, you're not going to be seeing startups being created as decentralized autonomous organizations. You're going to more see school clubs where you need funds and you need to coordinate people around those funds and measure trust that that no one's sort of like counting the votes behind a closed door, that's all in the chain. And so that's kind of how I think about it and where I see the obvious opportunities in sort of those, like, not necessarily corporations, but like volunteer organizations, clubs, of course, any type of investment organization, and things that aren't clearly like a company, but more of like a community, a volunteer organization, et cetera.
Yeah, Trevor, I actually 100% agree with that. I think very extremely large organizations, unless you really require some kind of censorship resistant component like a DeFi protocol, I think DAOs are much better used in those kind of like smaller communities. And you gave a ton of good use cases that I agree with. And that's also kind of why we are shipping our team product, which is like not really a DAO, but it can be used for any sort of like company for on-chain kind of like management of resources and action. Because we also saw that distinction as well, that if you have kind of like large company, it just doesn't really make sense in a lot of ways, at least like how DAOs currently are, to kind of like form that kind of for-profit company as a DAO. So we kind of are now shipping this like team's product to kind of also serve that market as well.
Absolutely. I think these are all so many great scenarios where DAOs would come into play here, especially thinking about these unlocks with philanthropic organizations and really a lot of different communities that could use the blockchain as a source of truth. So also, I think it'd be interesting to talk about other unlocks and use cases in the future that could be seen to happen. Trevor, I think you started to touch on this, but even within the ecosystem, Orlando, you mentioned multi-sig. Grace, you were mentioning console DAO. So just would be interested to hear from anyone here, next steps, what you see happening within Stacks and the broader Bitcoin ecosystem in regards to future unlocks for DAOs.
I think composability, and I kind of referenced this a bit when I mentioned that our club's product, but there are a few people building kind of more like organizational kind of tooling / infrastructure. And I think what we're going to start seeing now, and I know this just because I've been in talks with other startups, other builders in the ecosystem, is we're going to see a lot of kind of like, maybe not now, but like in 6 months or so, kind of like a lot of composability. And I guess I'll take it back a sec. The first thing is, number one, any sort of DAO, if you think about it, if they take any sort of action on chain, they can like interact with different protocols. So we've been talking to like the NFT marketplaces to kind of have a seamless experience so that like people can form a DAO and then they can like buy or sell NFTs. Like a collector DAO, right? You and your friends get together and like buy and sell NFTs. And so like kind of making DAOs composable with like the NFT ecosystem. And then if you want to trade tokens, kind of connecting and interacting with Alex or like Arc and Deco. So there's that kind of, I guess, more, I would call more like vertical integration there. But then there's also, I think, some kind of like horizontal integration that will be coming as well. So for example, you have this new startup called Trajan, which is working on reputation, on-chain reputation protocol. So we've talked to them and there's like a good amount of space for collaboration there. I mentioned before that like our club passes can potentially be used, but let's say like console, if you want to like kind of form a group chat there, and they can be used the base, like is your kind of like identifier in that console group chat. And there's also, we're building on what's called the Executor DAO framework, basically like a framework for these very modular DAOs. And like basically instead of having a DAO being one smart contract, it's like several, and each kind of smart contract is like a different, almost like Lego block. And so right now on top of us, you also have, so Marvin Jansen was the person who developed Executor DAO. And so he has a team right now also building some pretty cool stuff. And there's actually a DAO called Ecosystem DAO now in the community, and it's actually being used as kind of like the place of vote for the Stacks 2.1 upgrade. And so anything they build is actually composable with all of our DAOs and products because we also use Executor DAO as our framework and vice versa. And so in many ways, we're kind of like borrowing off each other, right? Like all our contracts are open source, so we're just kind of like literally copying each other's like smart contracts and things like that. But it leads to this like collective, just kind of like integration of everyone because we're all kind of building on similar frameworks, etc. So I think you're going to see different apps and different DAOs be able to kind of connect to each other, connect to different apps, and then also connect kind of vertically to like NFT and like DeFi apps in the ecosystem.
That's actually absolutely perfect because I was just about to ask what other projects are out there on the Stacks ecosystem developing DAO frameworks and composition tools. So this is really fascinating. Thanks for sharing that, Orlando. And I'd love to circle over to the star of our show here and shift gears a bit. Grace, thanks so much for being on here. Would love to, just shift gears and hear from you. I think starting with some origin stories of CrashPunks, and then of course we can circle back getting into DAOs and that roadmap. But I think first we'd love to hear, really take a deeper dive into your creative process for CrashPunks. Did you work with other artists? What was your inspiration? How it got started? I know Neil Stevenson got involved, which is super exciting, the author of Snow Crash, who coined the term or concept for metaverse. Would be interested to hear artistic inspiration behind this collection.
Hi, sure. I worked on CrashPunks last year, and I think at the time it was just to use art to bring a united language to the Stacks ecosystem because at the time Stacks was still really young. I was really into NFTs. I saw the future of culture and art and culture just being built with NFTs. And so I kind of just wanted to bring like a common visual language to the Stacks ecosystem. And there weren't any NFT projects. Well, there were some early projects, but not like any like bigger ones. And so I wanted to just create CrashPunks as an homage to Snow Crash and to the Stacks ecosystem and celebrate just like the creation of Web3 and everything being decentralized with Bitcoin and with Stacks. And so I created CrashPunks. A lot of the traits have an homage to Snow Crash, which was this book that was written in the 90s. And Neil Stevenson himself coined the word metaverse back in 91 and also wrote a lot about like cryptography and decentralization, and in a way wrote about virtual currency and predicted Bitcoin in a way. So I kind of just like wanted to pay an homage to that. And so a lot of the traits kind of have a reference to it. So if some of you have like a pizza box or poor impulse control or any of those traits, even Hero, the wallet, was named after the main character in Snow Crash. So I kind of just wanted to bring that to the Stacks ecosystem. And the creative process, I mean, I was drawing as a kid, but I stopped doing that. So it was kind of just like revisiting kind of my artistic passions from when I was a kid. And I just started drawing, and I was very influenced by sci-fi anime as a kid. So I kind of just started drawing. So the way the NFTs are generated, I draw the base traits, and they're probably 280 something base traits. And then you use an algorithm to generate more NFTs in the collection. And I did want to go more complex. I really wanted to make more cyber futuristic assets, but ultimately that wouldn't have worked out because of how just the layering works, and it just adds more complexity. So I did keep it more simple. Of course, I think inspiration wise, I was like, oh yeah, it'd be cool if they had like mecha characteristics, or if they had some like more cyborg characteristics and more futuristic outfits. But just with the technical limitations, I did keep it more simple. And then I was also at the time thinking about DAOs and being able to use DAOs to crowdfund or draw awareness to a certain topic. I mean, some of the initial concepts. So there was another concept that didn't make it through, but basically we wanted to tie the CrashPunks so at the time we were supporting another organization called Sustainable Bitcoin Standard, which is making Bitcoin mining green. So we also wanted to tie the CrashPunks to that narrative, where maybe the CrashPunks can change to solar punks based on the progress that we're making towards making Bitcoin mining green. So there were just some ideas like that. And also a personal interest of mine has been using DAO frameworks to crowdfund for science research, for decentralized science research, especially there are a lot of underfunded initiatives. So with regards to like groundbreaking research or any kind of medical research, or my personal interest was neuroscience and consciousness research. So traditional science topics that have been like underfunded in the institutions or overlooked in the institutions because it simply doesn't align with pharmaceutical interest or economic interest. And so I saw DAOs as an opportunity to crowdfund decentralized science research. And I personally wanted to do something around that as well. So that was another idea that I wanted to do that didn't make it through. But yeah, there's overall a lot of different opportunities and different paths to take. And that was just kind of like the early initial approach for CrashPunks.
I absolutely love that. And I didn't realize the initial concept and ideas around connecting CrashPunks to sustainable Bitcoin standard. I think that's so cool and different and interesting that you explore these different ways to leverage DAO initiatives with advancing scientific research. So are you still crafting like what you want the CrashPunk DAO initiative to look like?
Yeah, so the CrashPunk DAO initiative, we just migrated over to Console DAO. So all the CrashPunks, so basically our Discord server is read-only now. And as of this week, all the activity is migrating over to Console DAO. Console DAO is just launching, and we're the first community to be part of Console and to be the first Bitcoin DAO. And so it's still early. We still haven't announced a lot of the kind of surprises that are being worked on right now. But some of the aspects that I hope to be working with is Console has created a multi-sig wallet, so we can also have a shared treasury, which creates opportunities for different members to partake. And I'd be excited to see how that turns out, because I do want CrashPunks to be more community driven and to have members to be able to take part and vote on what they would like to see and vote on the future and vote on the vision. And so there's that. There's the multi-sig shared treasury that will be coming up. And then there's also Ballot Box, which is another initiative from Console, which is basically being able to vote on proposals. So what I've been heads down with is I actually worked on a Web3 short film for CrashPunks. So basically we worked on this animated series, just the CrashPunks animated series. It was partly funded by entertainment and funded by NFT collectors, where we just announced, hey, we're working on this short film, and then our collectors got to buy character tickets to be part of this, to bring their CrashPunks to life, bring it into like a 3D world, have a backstory to it. And then now it's premiering in Decentraland this Sunday. And what I hope to go from there is to make use of some of the voting mechanisms that the Console team has been building out, so that the DAO and the CrashPunk holders can have more of a participatory, interactive storytelling aspect to the future of kind of like where the CrashPunks film is going. So I just hope to see more community-driven initiatives and storytelling and, more interactivity. And I think the DAO and voting mechanisms really give a good platform for that.
Absolutely. That's super exciting. And you mentioned a few descriptive cues for what CrashPunks look like, just for some people who are tuning in, for people who are listening and perhaps haven't seen a CrashPunk before. Curious how you, as the creator, as the artist, would describe your collection in a few adjectives. How would you describe CrashPunks visually to our audience?
It's cyberpunk, sci-fi, anime, and it's kind of exploring. I think a lot of what I like to explore is just the future of emerging technologies and a discussion around what are the possibilities and considerations. So with the CrashPunks, there was actually an initial storytelling element that I hope we can build out more with regards to like the traits and everything. But I just want to explore a lot of the possibilities of emerging tech. And so you can see elements of this within the CrashPunks traits. You can see elements of this. In fact, it's a theme within the CrashPunks animated series, exploring a lot of this kind of sci-fi future, the metaverse, and where we're going within the metaverse.
Really love the collection. And yeah, there's so many fun ways you can find your own CrashPunk that speaks to you and has some kind of characteristic that's personalized in that way. So yeah, absolutely love it.
Yeah, it'd be awesome if all the CrashPunks just like dress up as their CrashPunk for Halloween. That'd be really
Definitely. Yes.
fun. We could have a costume contest.
Yeah, definitely needs to happen. And just also, I realized we didn't cover, when was CrashPunks launched again? It was last year?
Yes, December.
How many people are in the community now?
So we just migrated over to console. In the initial Discord, there were about like 20,000 members, but I think a lot of them were people who like FOMO'd into the project early on. And so the people who have stuck around, we have probably like a couple of hundred people who are like contributing and sticking around and chatting. And then in the console community, we just migrated over. So there's some early people who are in the console chat right now. And so shout out to Nikki, he's been super active, and J2P2, Algorithm, Abro, Good Kitty, she's been like CrashPunks of the month recently. So yeah, we have a lot of amazing people who are early in the console chat platform right now. And so I hope everyone who hasn't migrated yet migrate over.
Yes, definitely. Such a great call to action here. There's definitely some CrashPunks here as audience members. So for sure, check out Console DAO, basically the Discord of the ecosystem, except even better. And CrashPunks is the first community to be on Console DAO, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, awesome. Just a few more questions about CrashPunks. Curious in regards to, you've done so many partnerships in the Stacks ecosystem, from the Stacks Foundation to events, games, and working with individuals and new tools, leveraging new tools being built like Console DAO. How did you seek to balance the collection, both from an artistic perspective, the artistic value per se, versus the utility aspect?
So, I mean, we've been exploring a lot of different ways to create more utility. And I think they all have like an artistic or creative bent to it. So we have, for example, a CrashPunks game that you can play within console. So if you go to the fourth icon down, you'll see game, and then you can start playing this game. And that's also artistic. Generally, I don't think I feel like Web3 itself is very creative in nature, right? Everyone's just like building from ground up, building from scratch, and working on the blockchain, working on stacks, working on all these technical interactions. I think that's all creative, artistic in a way. And so I think Web3 in itself is just a big pool of creativity right now. And so the game itself, that was Trevor's lead. And basically that is just a fun way for people to engage and kind of put their CrashPunks into a team and battle each other. And that is artistic in itself. And then there's the film, which is utility and artistic in itself as well. So it's a fun way to kind of build out more of the CrashPunks world. I think a lot of what we're doing is just building out more of the CrashPunks world, having more of the storytelling elements around it. And so with the film, a lot of the CrashPunks, the people who got the character tickets, they are able to like turn their CrashPunks into a 3D avatar and then have more of a backstory. And I was leading up a lot of like the creative direction and the storyline behind that. And then we also have the merch drop that is this week. And so we've been working with Flatlay on that. And Flatlay, they've created this token gated platform for us, just like from the ground up. And basically we have 2 shirts available right now, and those are quite graphic, and it was actually quite a process to get those made because it's quite a unique shirt. Especially there's this like geisha shirt that's like completely like printed all over, because I wanted to make something cool for all the CrashPunk holders. And I think a lot of the CrashPunks also initially really loved the outfits that the characters were wearing, and so Yeah, it'd be really cool to turn the outfits into augmented reality filters or like let people be able to like wear them. For now, we have these two shirts that have an AR element to them. So if you have the app and then you hold up your phone, you can actually animate your shirt and then become a geisha or become a samurai. And so I think it's just been thinking of like fun ways for people to interact with CrashPunks. And that's, I think, how I've been able to balance the utility and the art, just making sure that we have fun ways for people to interact with the brand.
Absolutely. And I just have to say, I love the merch you guys have come out with so far. And it'd be even cool to see, I know Ryder's coming out with some really interesting NFC tagging capabilities that you can scan with Xverse. So who knows, maybe there's some interesting collaborations down the road there. And also speaking of Xverse, would love to bring up Ken to the stage while we have you. Would be curious if you could share with our users what you think the next steps are in supporting DAOs with Xverse as a wallet.
Yeah, so Xverse is kind of like infrastructure for Web3 and DAOs. So we currently support all types of applications built on Bitcoin using stacks, and DAOs are no exception. So Xverse as a wallet is basically a way for users to authenticate with DAOs and hold assets. So for example, if a DAO membership is gated by an NFT or token, Xverse Wallet will be the app that holds these tokens. And if you haven't downloaded Xverse before, we have a great NFT collection and management interface built in. So it's the perfect home for your CrashPunks. And this is something that other wallets that integrate with stacks do not have right now. And also, Xverse is a Bitcoin wallet. So you can hold, send, and receive Bitcoin right now with Xverse. One feature that I think will unlock a lot of value for DAO apps is the ability for apps to request Bitcoin transactions from Xverse. And I'm not just talking about transferring Bitcoin from one address to another, but also including data in those transactions that can trigger more complex logic in a smart contract that can unlock functionality for Bitcoin DAOs specifically. So this is a feature that we would love to launch in the next few months. And currently with Xverse Mobile, all the apps actually run inside of the mobile browser window. And this could be pretty limiting in terms of user experience. So we're launching our browser extension in the next few weeks. So that will bring all of the functionality that Xverse Mobile has right now to a desktop browser. And in the near future, we want to also allow a native mobile app to connect with Xverse and request transactions. So the DAO could have its own native mobile app with a great interface and everything, and it would just interact with the wallet through direct connection within the phone. It doesn't have to go through like a browser or anything like that. And lastly, we've partnered with Multisave, which you mentioned earlier, to basically have multi-sig wallet built within Xverse, which I think will also be very useful for DAOs. And one recent development is that Manib dropped this, I think, a couple of days ago on Twitter, that Stacks Working Group is working on this two-way pegged Bitcoin solution on Stacks, which means use these smart contracts, Clarity smart contracts, will be able to create Bitcoin transactions trustlessly and in a decentralized way, which I think will also unlock a lot of additional functionality for all kinds of DAO apps. And Xverse is going to definitely support that as well.
Yeah, I would also add the StackerDAO actually works pretty well in the Xverse browser, like mobile browser view screen, which is kind of funny because we didn't test it out with Xverse before launching. It kind of just worked out very nicely. So I've like voted on proposals using the Xverse mobile app, just connecting to the StackerDAO's app. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Be sure to connect to StackerDAO Labs through Xverse. Check out CrashPunks NFTs on Gamma. Of course, if Bitcoin NFTs are new for you, you can get started on Xverse. It's available on iPhone and Android. Acquire some NFTs through the in-app browser. Just go into the marketplace, your choice. Type in, for example, gamma.io. So it's quite easy, actually. So it looks like we're about at time. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise with us. As always, really appreciate it. And with that said, we are ready to announce the winner of our CrashPunk giveaway. So a little bit of a drum roll here. Our winner is 20v.btc. So congratulations. Really appreciate everybody tuning in, and definitely stay tuned and see you next time.
This has been the Own Your Crypto podcast, brought to you by Xverse. Our intention with this podcast is to empower you to take charge of your crypto with confidence and get excited for the future of self-custodial finance. If you enjoyed the conversation, please leave us a rating so more people can discover the show, and feel free to share with a friend who's also curious about the future of Bitcoin. Thanks for listening. We hope you'll connect with us on Twitter at Xverse app, and see you next time.